Welcome to Time Traveling Team, the weekly podcast where we review every story of Doctor Who right from the very beginning. I'm Paddy.
And I'm Tricia. As 2023 comes to an end, we decided to record a special look-back Q&A rambling in the TARDIS. Basically, we're bored and tired and lazy. So we decided to go with the lazy option to close out the year. And first, we did this last year as well. It's becoming a bit of an annual thing. So we're
Yeah,
going to be answering some questions from our listeners. We might ask each other some burning or random shite
simmering.
questions. And generally the idea is just that we shoot the shit for a while and,
Yeah,
close off the year.
yeah, which is pretty much like us shooting the shit is like generally half of a podcast episode.
Yeah.
we set up with 4 things to discuss, and we end up just kind of going off into random tangents,
Yeah.
like last week.
Yeah, I will say though, this is because one of our listeners, the famous Paul,
Mm-hmm.
did ask like, oh, can he ask questions about the Sixties? So the Q&A every year is really the one big opportunity for
To jump
us
the
to
timeline.
talk about modern Who
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
with no filter. Do you know? Well, we'll get to filters later, but
Yeah.
reasonably no filter.
So, with that in mind, as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts on anything we discussed today. So you can join us at the usual places at Time Teamp, that's TIMETEAMP, on Facebook, X/Twitter, Instagram, or you can email us at timetravelingteam@teamproductions.com. So, will we go through the listener questions first?
Yeah, so we have 3 general categories for questions.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a general Who question. We have some
Mm-hmm.
questions on the specials, and then we have some podcasty specific ones. So questions more so around the episodes we've talked about already, and the podcasting experience in general. And then we have what I have called random shite, which is questions that I came up with that I want to ask you. And I think you have a handful that
Lovely.
you want to ask me too.
I I have a couple.
Cool. So we'll start with the general question first, right? And this is
Mm-hmm.
from Neve on Instagram, also known
Mm-hmm.
as my sister. And
Hi, Dave.
so actually there's an interesting thing for Paddy to know, right? Because I don't know if he knows. So my sister is not a
Mm-hmm.
science fiction fan in general. However, since she got together with her husband, she has watched, she's watched a lot all the Marvel stuff. She's seen all the Star Wars movies and things. And because Steve likes Doctor Who, my sister has actually watched all of the 60s specials. So she's actually watched a
Oh,
fair bit of
lovely.
Doctor Who recently. Um, and so her question is actually, I think, one of the hardest questions in the list because her question is, what's the funniest Doctor Who episode?
Hmm. I will say I've known your sister for over 13 years, and she's come a long way from what the fuck are those 2 idiots laughing at
It's bees, Paddy.
to
It's bees.
bees to bees. Don't worry, we will get to the origin of the beast. Like, I think we've told the
I
origin of the
think we
beast
have,
story, but
yeah.
once we, yeah, but once what like there will come a time where the bee story will become very relevant.
Yeah.
So, what was her question again? Sorry.
What's the funniest Doctor Who episode? She says episode. I'm going to say episode slash story.
Right. One automatically springs to mind,
Hmm.
and I have to just kind of cast my mind over another one or a couple. So the first one for me that automatically springs to mind is the Romans.
Mm.
I love the Romans. It is so fucking funny, and it mixes like it mixes the tension and suspense of a Doctor Who historical story,
Mm.
but with good humor. You know, it was the first time they'd ever got into that, and Hartnell, like, who's very well known for appearing in Carry On Sergeant, where he plays like the straight man type character.
Mm.
Here, actually, seeing him stretch his comedy muscles, like he really was an all rounder, I think. And there's that interview of him saying that he's a serious character actor. He had some good comedy chops, I thought.
Mm.
Um, Another one though that kind of springs to mind for me, and again, it's down to the dynamic of the people involved in it, is the Unicorn and the Wasp.
Mm,
Um, because we mentioned it when we were talking about the Black Orchid, it is a murder mystery, but it's set during Donna's run, so it's David Tennant and Catherine Tate, whose chemistry is almost unparalleled.
mm.
You know, there's very few combinations that match their chemistry, and there's a sequence where like they're playing a game of like life or death charades, and it's fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
So I would go, yeah, I would think I would go with the Romans and the Unicorn and the Wasp.
Yeah, so I really struggled with this. Like I said, for someone who doesn't watch that much Doctor Who, I think she asked probably one of the toughest questions.
Mm,
Um, so the interesting thing I find about Doctor Who is that Doctor Who has episodes that have funny moments, but it's
hmm
not inherently a funny ha show.
No.
So a lot of like the funny moments I was thinking of actually came in the midst of also very serious stories. Like you mentioned the Romans, I would 100% agree with you. Um,
hmm
but the Romans also does have Barbara being sold into slavery, Ian being sold
hmm
into slavery, etc.
hmm
Um, so I had like three for the classic era that we've watched up to now, and I had two that came to mind from the revival era. I will say I did have a look online just to see like what do people generally say are funny episodes, and a lot of people say the Robin Hood one, Peter Capaldi's uh,
Oh, robots of
robot.
Sherwood.
Yeah, I don't remember that one though, so I can't speak to it. I only remember very brief bits of it, and I didn't actually find it funny. So from classic, I agree with you on the Romans. I think while it has poignant moments dotted into it, like the whole thing at the villa at the start, the
hmm
leftover pheasant is in the fridge. It's just,
Yeah,
it's brilliant. Like I said, it has some serious moments. Like I said, like Barbara's breakdown when Ian is separated from her is devastating. There is obviously
the burning of Rome.
the burning of Rome, the Catholicism component of it, but also
hmm
Nero being
Sex pest.
a sex pest, basically. Yeah. The other one, which it has, like, I mean, I have to mention it. I can't not mention it. Is the Time Meddler because it has Space Helmet for a cow in it. I can't not mention it because it's the one line that will make me crack my ass laughing. Just apropos of nothing. But again, like the Time Meddler has some hilarious moments in it. Like the Time Meddler as a
hmm
character in general, some fantastic bits.
hmm
But again, that story had some serious under elements as well. Very serious in one
Yes.
case.
Yeah.
Um, and
It's the only time we was so far that we've had to do a trigger warning at the start of the podcast.
yeah. And then the last one from the classic era that I had was Pirate Planet. I think Pirate Planet had some hilarious moments. It was very funny. Romana was fucking brilliant, firing all cylinders. Um, but again, you do have that amazing Tom Baker moment.
hmm
Then what's it for? Fucking brilliant. So those are my three for the classic era. If I had to pick one of those three, I'd probably go with the Romans as well, because like the Romans has a special place in my heart. But Space Helmet for a Cow will always get a giggle.
Actually, speaking of kind of like funny moments and serious stories, you do kind of. I would have to give a shout out to the Aztecs.
Mm.
You know, it's like, where did you get this? My fiance. Okay, you're what? Because yes, I made some cocoa and I got engaged, and he says it so nonchalantly.
Yeah,
It's
or like,
oh,
oh, is it in The Chase where Ian's like, Barbara, give me your card. And she's like, oh, not again. It's so good. It's so good. So
uh,
yeah, I would probably go Romans, Time Meddler, Pirate Planet. Then from
yeah.
the modern era, to be honest, I really am, and this could be because of the specials. I really am drawn to the Catherine Tate, David Tennant um, run the show. I totally agree with you with
Mhm.
Unicorn and the Wasp. But the one that picks it to the post for me is Partners in Crime. The
Yeah.
season opener for series 4 is so good. It's like I'm waving at Fat. It's like it's,
Yeah.
you want to
Uh
mate. It's like, oh, there's just so many great quips in
yeah.
it.
And like the mime game between
Yeah.
the and they just look and you're one staring right at them.
It's sort of brilliant. So yeah, I would agree with you, like I said, on Unicorn the Wasp as well. Um, I was trying to think like, oh, like, is there some funny ones? Because again, a lot of them have funny moments, but like the episode isn't a comedy, do you know? So,
Mm,
Neve, that is the very rambling answer. So if we're talking classic, we're kind of both agreed on the Romans,
the room.
and if we're talking new, pretty much anything with Catherine Tate and David Tennant, to be honest. But specifically, I would go with
Yeah.
Partners in Crime, and you went with Unicorn and the Wasp.
And like again, just to talk about that dynamic, because like we're going to get to it in a couple of years, probably 2 years. Um, like I think even with the specials again, Catherine Tate showed that she has a great dramatic side to her
Mm,
performance as well, because everyone knows like would know her primarily from like her sketch show and maybe like the American Office, but then when it comes to Doctor Who, when she came in because of that comedy reputation, and it brought out some fantastic
mm.
serious dramatic performances in the entire series. Yeah.
Like I am just thinking through like other episodes and like funny moments, and to be honest, like most of the good stories have one or two sort of like giggly moments or like moments where you might break your ass. Like again, pretty much all of series 4, with the exception of Midnight, I
Hmm.
think, which isn't designed to be funny. Um,
No, no.
but like Runaway Bride has like the three guys in segways. It's just like it's not like I
I'd
have pockets. It's like, oh my god, there's just so many amazing one-liners.
uh,
Um,
I'd actually go. I think Midnight and Turn Left.
yeah,
Yeah,
Turn Left is the other
both of
one.
those.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
but like if you think about school reunion, it's like we are in a car. Yeah, but don't you have this? Is it
Hmm.
we are in a car? I was like, that's so good.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Uh,
so great question, Eve. Thanks very much. Um, tough one to start it off, but
yes.
now we get to jump the timeline
Hmm.
significantly from our perspective and talk a bit about the 60th specials. So the first question is from Whitney on Instagram, uh, which is the general question of what do you think of the new specials? So Paddy, I'll leave it to you first. What did you think of them? So we had three, and they were all very different in their own way. So what did you think?
Yes. Very, very different. Each one is very different
Mm,
because each one takes a different aspect of what makes Doctor Who so good.
mm,
And overall, so this is overall, I think the 60th specials were really enjoyable.
mm,
I have, I think I do have some nitpicks for Star Beast, which is the first one,
mm,
and the Giggle, which is
mm,
the third one. I think where it was at its strongest, and again, it's a great representation of which is for me what makes series 4 of the revival era the best season of the revival era, is that it's just the Doctor and Donna essentially in a big fucking spooky spaceship.
mm,
And there's like that worked so well. It really did. And you just get to see this fantastic chemistry. It brings you back to like everyone has their era of the show where they get their most like serotonin,
mm,
whatever, you know. And it was nice to kind of, and I know the show's all about going forward, and I actually fully endorse that mentality of like it's always about moving forward, it's always about going on ahead. But it was nice to take like just a small trip down memory lane
mm,
for a group that are amongst my favorite in the entire show. Um, the Star Beast was you have Miriam Margolyes in it, and that's like 50 points right then, right off the bat. She was fantastic in it. Um, it's nice seeing like the extended Noble Temple family unit back. Seeing Sylvia back is great. Hasn't lost a step. The introduction of Rose, I thought Yasmin Finney did a really good job.
Hmm.
Um, and like what you can say like that there was a certain amount of pressure on her, being like that she is, I think, the first openly transgender actress to appear on the show,
Mm.
as a transgender character. Thought she did a really good job, and I know that there's some discourse around how well her presentation was. I thought, look, from my perspective, I thought it was handled really well.
Mm.
Um, then, if you want to fast forward onto the giggle, it was. No, I know we might differ slightly on the on Neil Patrick Harris, and we've had discussions surrounding Neil Patrick Harris
Mm.
before, but he worked. I've seen him in something else, which done by Russell T Davis, which was "It's a Sin,"
Mm.
and I thought he was fantastic in that. And it's clear that they have a really good working relationship, and I think it carries over here. Um, there was, I will say that maybe the toy maker at times was a bit too camp compared to the last time we saw him,
Mm.
where the toy maker is a mischievous character, absolutely. But I think that there were times where it was like, is is this a bit much? But then then I was feeling that he's had so much exposure to the human race that his characteristics can change over time as well.
Mm.
Like his methodology can change. But I suppose the big thing from the last one then was the introduction of Shuti Gatwa as the new Doctor. And for me personally, I think he's hitting all the right marks straight out the gate.
Mm.
I think, yeah. So overall, I think the new specials were a success.
I would agree. I think the new specials were great. I think for a celebration event to get that group of people back together, Russell T Davies, Catherine Tate, David Tennant, I think they did fantastically well. I
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed all three episodes. Um, I do have little gripey nitpicks with
Mm-hmm.
two of them, and I do think the middle one, I've forgotten the name of it now,
Wild Blue Yonder.
Wild Blue Yonder. I would say I think Wild Blue Yonder is probably the best of the three, in
Mm-hmm.
the sense that I don't have any nitpick with Wild Blue Yonder.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was stellar from beginning to end. I'm really looking forward to us discussing it on the pod because there's so many interesting dynamics with the Doctor and Donna in that story. It
Mm-hmm.
was also fucking terrifying. Um,
It like there's one part in it there. I think it's 5 minutes into it,
mm,
and they just wave at someone they see in the distance, and even then, I was like, nope, nope, don't
no,
like me, don't like you.
it's when David does the like
Oh,
exorcist
the
crab
spider.
spider thing.
Yeah.
Um, I think Starbbeast was fucking amazing. I said this to John Macy, a buddy of mine, through the Mission Log Pod. He has his own podcast as well called the B Team Podcast. Um, I said to John, I was like, it brought me right back to Series 4 vibes. Um, right back into the action. David Tennant and Catherine Tate were fucking phenomenal together. Um, I loved the introduction of the new unit character, whose name I've forgotten.
Oh, Shirley, I think her name is.
Mm. I loved her introduction. I thought she was fantastic. I loved the Meep. The Meep was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I actually went to the Harry Potter Studios tour in London um, the other week with my sister Neve, who asked the earlier question. And they've actually added, I wasn't there that time, they've added a greenhouse bit to the back lot
Oh,
where you
nice.
can go in and actually like pull up a mandrake thing, which is really good. So when you go in, you hear that first
Mm-hmm.
herbology class from Chamber of Secrets. And I said to Neve, "Oh, do you recognize the voice?" And she was like, "I fucking do. Why do I recognize the voice? Like, it's the voice of the Meep." She's like Maeve Margulies needs to be on the show like properly, not just in CG because she's so good. Um, so yeah, I thought it was great. I thought it was a great reintroduction to the character. I loved how Sylvia hasn't changed.
Mm,
Um, I loved that Donna gave away all her money. I love it.
mm,
I love it. I love that she's then freaked when she realizes why the fuck she did it. Um, I gave away so much money. And I actually loved the character of Rose. I loved how she was introduced.
mhm,
I love how how everyone reacted to her. I love how Donna was completely normalizing it. I loved the conversation between Sylvia and Donna. Again, I know there's been
mm,
discourse online about the fact that the two cis characters were talking about the trans character and the trans character wasn't speaking up for herself.
mhm.
Um, and I agree, but in a way, the story they were trying to tell was to show us how Donna has changed and who she is now. Sadly, the
Yeah,
story wasn't about Rose. Um,
no.
the story was about Donna.
There was some. There was similar discourse surrounding the dead naming sequence,
Yeah.
and again as to whether it should be a thing, shouldn't be a thing. But
Yasmin asked for that
again,
though, from what I know. Like I was reading stuff online. I think she actually asked for that scene to be put in.
I think, yeah, that sounds familiar because I think Russell said that he talked about it amongst with the crew as to
Mm.
whether or not they should actually go ahead with
Yeah,
it. But again, I think it adds to your point of like Donna's growth as a character reacting to it.
yeah. Um, the one thing I didn't like and my nitpick with it is I totally get where they were going. Like I said, I love Rose as a character. I love the fact that by having a non-binary character or a trans character who doesn't fit into from the human side, who doesn't fit into gender roles, I think
Hmm.
having her be like she is the solution to the meta crisis. I love that.
Hmm.
What I felt, personally speaking, they needed to do maybe one more write over. It was a bit too fucking bonk bonk on the head, particularly the way it was said was the line, um, of course, we come up with a solution that no male presenting Time Lord would ever think about. Just let it
Hmm.
go. And given the fact that the Doctor has only just regenerated back into a male form,
Hmm.
I don't. The line just it felt a bit too on the nose. Don't
Hmm.
disagree with the message, but I disagree with the delivery. Um, and that was like my one like nitpick on
Hmm.
that particular story. Um,
There's actually one thing I didn't actually peg until just now
mm,
is that we actually got to see that Donna got a happy ending,
yeah,
the happy ending that she deserved, because the way she has to leave the TARDIS
mm,
is horrible.
yeah,
It's one of the worst, but she gets a happy ending as a result, and I
yeah.
like that.
And I love the
Yeah,
fact
that
that
was
like her
nice.
family is lovely. They love her. It's great. Then we have the giggle. So the giggle has a few issues.
How the fuck did you survive the giggle? I'll never know.
Just a reminder for people who've been with us for a long time, and a heads up for people who've been new. I fucking hate puppets. I hate puppets and I hate clowns. The only exception to the puppets thing is the Muppets, because they're Muppets. And it's
Hmm.
different. I fucking hate puppets. So the whole idea of like a ventriloquist dummy puppet thing, no, no, I'm sorry. Like Russell, are you trying to
Hmm.
fucking break my brain? Um, the other thing is I don't like Neil Patrick Harris in the role of the toy maker. Personally, I did not connect with him. I loved the toy maker in the original story. I loved the character. I loved the way he was presented. I thought he was really good. I don't see how the character went from that character to Neil Patrick Harris. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, Neil Patrick Harris plays the same. He's one of those people who plays the same tones and beats in every character he plays. And that worked in How I Met Your Mother. I don't person for me it didn't work here. I found it very distracting. The other thing that's my nitpick on this one is something that Russell T Davies did or said where he made the toy maker racist, and
Yeah.
that was a conscious decision on his part. And in my opinion, and again, others feel free to disagree with me, right? But in my opinion, the reason why he did that was the same reason why Stephen Moffat made the first Doctor sexist and racist, which is there is a very serious retrospective issue with the Celestial Toymaker, the story, and how the
Mm-hmm.
Toymaker is presented in this Asian getup, using the word celestial, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Was it intended to be racist at the time? I don't think so. I think the word celestial probably came first and the design came later.
Mm.
But I understand they didn't want to do that, so he's just the toy maker. Mm,
I remember I was going back to our actual discussion
mm,
on the Celestial Toymaker, and I see. Okay, and this was my own brain kind of thing. Was like going, yes, he is wearing I from the looks of it Chinese
mm,
style clothing, and they have the he's termed the Celestial Toymaker. But my brain took the celestial part as he is celestial as in heavenly.
yes.
He is, and we had this, and also the one thing I loved was I think that this can finally push an end to a certain part of that discourse was they colorized the flashbacks to
Mm,
that story. Michael Goff was not in yellowface.
no.
Michael Goff was in his thing. He was just wearing the Oriental style clothing.
Mm,
So I think that mitigates some part of it, but again, that's just me.
yeah. I do think that the name Celestial Toymaker came first. I think the outfit came
Yeah,
second. I think
yeah,
choosing that outfit is the racist component, not having the character
hmm
called the Celestial Toymaker. But
yeah,
to address that, in my opinion, Russell went the same way as Stephen Moffat, where he dumped the celestial part of the title, which is fine. Again, understand why. But he made, and he said this, he made the character a racist to highlight the fact that, yeah, calling the character the Celestial Toymaker and the way he was dressed in the original story was racist. I'm like, those two things do not equate to each other. The Toymaker
mm,
has no reason to be racist.
hmm
And putting on this fake German accent is actually more racist than anything else because it perpetuates the stereotype that all Germans are racist. Um,
I actually didn't, I thought you were talking about the time where he refers to a guy's skin tone.
yeah, but like
I, th-
he
oh,
makes
yeah,
a racist comment, but he's also putting on a German
Mm,
accent the whole fucking time.
yeah,
I'm like, you're kind of undoing your own message. Like if he had him
mm,
speaking in a British accent because he's in Britain and he said that line, you're like, okay, there's your nod to whatever. Again, I still think it's unnecessary, but whatever. I am not of Asian descent,
he,
so I my feelings on it are obviously very different.
yeah. He actually reminded me of an evil version of Mister of sorry of Jim Broadbent's character from the Paddington movies.
Yes, he reminded that too. So I had a bit of an issue with that. However, the Spice Girls scene was fucking amazing.
Mm,
I loved. I've seen a lot of discourse on this online, but I loved his little, as much as I hate the puppets, his little marionette show of
mm,
um, specifically the Moffat era,
yeah,
where all the fucking companions died in
mm,
some way sense. He's like, oh well, that's all right then. You know, she's alive and her last one's alive.
yeah,
Well, that's all right then. I've seen people complaining that like quote unquote the fam. So Jodie's companions aren't there. Like, oh yeah, no, like this
mm-hmm,
is Russell, like just sort of like skipping over Jodie. It's like, no, Chibnall didn't kill off any of his companions, so they didn't
mm-hmm,
need to be in it. What he did
yeah,
put in was the Flux, which was that doctor's big loss, because she kept all of her
yeah,
companions alive. Fucking brilliant.
mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really good.
Except for one who actually we can get on to that one person maybe as a
Mm.
question after this, but can't carry on
I
with your
think I know
point.
who you mean. I don't think I counted that person as a companion because she wasn't at the time. But if I'm thinking of the same person you were,
No, 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 no.
okay.
No, like I saw a thing on, I think it was the Radio Times, and they had a poll of like greatest Doctor Who companions, and they had James Corden's character
Mm.
there, and I was like, how is he a companion?
Because he
He
was in
appeared
two stories.
in two stories. Okay, if that's the case, then for me, Professor Eustachius Jericho should also count as a companion
Yes.
because he
Oh, I
he was
fucking love
there
him.
for three
Yeah.
stories, and he unfortunately
Yeah.
doesn't make it out of the flux. But Jesus Christ, what a character!
Yeah. Um. So yeah, I thought that was amazing. I love Donna still being like the fastest temp and Chiswick type thing. I love the little nod to that. I fucking love it. Um. I love that you're one. Um. In the wheelchair. Again, I feel so shit. I don't remember her name.
Shirley.
Shirley. Um. I love that she's in it again. I love that she gets. I love the moment I watched the behind the scenes of her reaction to the fact that the TARDIS now has an accessibility ramp.
Hmm.
It's just the small thing is lovely. I have not. I have only seen one story with Mel, but I love that we got another classic companion back. I love the way David is with her. It's very very cute. It was done very well. I particularly love that we got Kate back.
Mm.
Your one
I
fucking killed it in that. Her thing where she goes like, don't think I didn't see you walking earlier. It's so good. It's so good. That scene was fucking
mhm.
amazing. I love it.
I saw a very interesting take that I thought was a fascinating thing about uh, Kate's fucking meltdown,
Mm,
and I was like, "Wait, that like it's amazing." And it speaks to like how the initial gut reaction of a person doesn't define that
mm.
person. It's what they do based on that gut reaction. I was like, but like Gemma Redgrave is fantastic. Like she has owned the part of Kate Stewart since I think her first
Yeah,
appearance in the
she's
Power of the
so
Tree.
good. She's so good. Like she's totally like she's super high on my list of people I want to meet at a convention sometime. So that was great. And I think Shooty was fantastic. I think Shooty was brilliant. I'm
Mm.
really looking forward to him. I think he's going to be amazing. I think he's fantastic. My other nitpick, right, and then I'll get back to you again. My other nitpick is the bi generation. I kind of liked it in the context of the episode. I don't like what Russell T Davies said after. They all bi generated. There's now when Hartnell regenerated into Troughton,
Hmm.
Troughton walked away, and there's now a bi regeneration version of Hartnell. When and he's basically like when John Pertwee, you know, regenerated into Tom Baker. Tom Baker stood up and walked out of the lab, and then John Pertwee stood up and walked out of the lab. They all duplicated, meaning that there is a second version of every Doctor still alive.
Is that what he meant? Is
Yes,
it?
he specifically gave the examples of Hartnell and Pertwee, and um, I think he gave Eccleston as well, but or it might have been Colin Baker was one of them. Um,
Hmm.
but he basically said that it happened across the Doctor's timeline, and that I don't agree with. I think that's weird. I think that's completely unnecessary.
I don't even get how you're going to like how that actually works.
Yeah, and I do wonder if this is like the back door into what Russell wants to do when he's bringing back his expanded universe again. The Hooniverse side of things. I don't know, but I didn't,
Yeah.
I didn't, I didn't quite agree with that. Um, Other than that, though, I thought it was great. I know I've gone a bit of a ramble, but that's the whole point of this. The other thing,
Hmm.
and I think you know what I'm gonna say. I hate that they're like canonically acknowledging that Sarah Jane is dead.
Yeah.
Like, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it for numerous reasons. One, because I think it's unnecessary, but also because it feels like it goes against Elizabeth Sladen's wishes. Now,
Mm.
I'm sure that Sadie, her daughter, signed off on it when they did that special over lockdown. But just like there's a story that Russell T Davies and shared about Elizabeth Sladen, where when they talked about like what do we do when the story eventually ends. And Elizabeth Sladen said that like she never wanted her character to be married off. She never wanted her character to be killed off. And so Russell asked her, so how does it end? And all she said was, she goes up.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. Which is why at the end of the Sarah Jane adventures, the tag is, and the story goes on forever.
Mm-hmm.
So for him to then come along and say like, hey, we did this story during lockdown, we're doubling down that this is actually canon, like it broke my heart a little bit. Like if anyone was to do it, I'm glad it was Russell that did it though, because he obviously worked with
Mm.
with Liz. He brought Sarah Jane back as a character, but it did break my heart a small bit.
And like, you see, this is the danger, like, as well, because like I think the only two deceased actors' characters that they've killed off are the Brig and Sarah Jane,
Mm,
and like we talked about, unfortunately, Caroline John is no longer with us.
mm.
But as far as we're aware, Liz Shaw is still
Up on Moonbase.
alive and kicking. Um, oh, I need to look up his name because I don't want to do the man a disservice. Um, give me a second.
While you're looking that up, did you see that apparently they had considered bringing Peter Purvis back for the Ghoul?
No, I didn't see that now at all.
Yeah, I saw.
That would
I didn't read the article. I saw some post on Facebook about it.
hmm,
That they were considering
that'd be
bringing him back.
interesting. Sorry, Michael Craze. Michael Craze
Mm,
passed away, but Ben, as stated by the Sarah Jane Adventures, is still around.
yeah.
Um, and obviously our beloved Jacqueline,
Mm,
she's no longer with us, but Ian never said that she had passed away.
yeah.
So, it does kind of. I know that. Look, Sarah Jane is an iconic character, and I love Sarah Jane. You know that,
Mm,
but just because Liz is no longer with us doesn't mean that the character has to be shelved forever. You
yeah,
know.
and particularly now that Sadie has taken up the reins in audio form, like now we could still get a load of Sarah Jane Adventures audio stories now that Russell's back at the helm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that happens between the end of season 5 and the lockdown special, because that is like what a 10-year gap nearly
Yeah.
between them. But I don't know. I thought it was unnecessary. No, the way they did it was very sweet, but I thought it was unnecessary. So Whitney, again, very long rambling thing. Unless Paddy, you have another comment to make about the specials.
Uh, just two other things. One, whatever about how great David Tennant was with Mel, but Bonnie Langford, I thought Shooty was fucking brilliant with
Oh,
her
she's
as well.
fabulous there. Yeah.
Yeah, like we'll see more of him, like obviously now in the Christmas special, but there's a Tom Baker esque charm, mischievous charm,
Mm,
or and even like everyone comes and makes it their own, but there's a certain, yeah, as I said, like Tom's cheekiness at the start, even Troughton's cheekiness at the start of
mm,
his thing. There's a wonderful, uh, again, it's like all everyone seems to do it. There's a bit of a tribute to the past.
mm,
I think it'll be unconscious or it'll be conscious or unconscious. But no, I'm looking forward to his run on
mm,
it. The other thing then as well was I really enjoyed all like the deep cut callbacks.
mm,
Um, Although I will say that one it seems to be for me one little error because Shushi makes the statement that ever since that we first met the Toy Master, we've been running.
mm,
And he goes through everything, but he talks about what is it? Talks about something to do with the Daleks. I can't remember what it was. Then he talks about the gods of Ragnarok, and then he says Mavic Chen.
mm,
Mavic Chen happened before they met the Toy Maker.
mm.
So
Yeah.
I gotta do like I was like
Yeah.
no, yeah, I do, I push the glasses up and yeah, but at the same time I loved it. I
Mm,
loved all these callbacks because if fans want to go back and now they throughout the rest of the world except for here
mm,
they can go and see whatever version of Dalek's Master Plan is
yeah.
available on Disney Plus or BBC iPlayer.
Yeah.
You
The
know.
one thing I don't want to get too into it. I'm sure we'll talk about it when we eventually get around to talking about the special in detail. I did see one other interesting line of discourse around the giggle online,
Mm-hmm.
which is when the bi-generation happens.
Mm-hmm.
Donna says the line, and I'm going to paraphrase it. How many colors do you come in, or do you come in many
Oh,
colors?
yeah. Do you come in a range of colors?
In a range of
That's what she
colors, right?
says.
And I've seen a lot of people freaking out about that line. And again, personally, I just found the line funny. And I
Mm-hmm.
think Donna saying it was funny because it is the
Mm-hmm.
second time we have heard that theme, that question being asked. The first being on the Sarah Jane Adventures story, Death of the Doctor, where it's
Mm-hmm.
Clyde, who, for anyone who's not seen Sarah Jane Adventures, who's a young black teenager, who
Mm-hmm.
asks the exact same question to Matt Smith. Can you be any color or are you always white?
Mm-hmm.
And so people are saying it was racist, that it was tone deaf and whatever. Um, I didn't see it that way. I saw it as Donna being like, okay, so you can be a woman and you can also change your melanin count. um, and just sort of being like, holy shit. Um, it wasn't done in a sort of like, how many colors can you be? It wasn't done in a derisive way or whatever.
No,
Um, but I do know people had
but
issue with it. I didn't personally, but again, I'm, you know,
see, it's an interesting one because, like, no, maybe it could come up as wrong because when Donna gains her memories back,
mm,
she says that she kind of remembers everything that he remembers from when he left.
mm.
So like she only has snatches of the flux, I think, and everything like that. Would she remember what the Matrix showed Jodie
I think so. The
about
interesting
the
thing,
timeless
so
child?
it was the duplicate Donna that said that she remembered everything. Our Donna was a little bit cagey. She said, I think
Mm-hmm.
in the moment she did, but now the meta crisis was up, she doesn't remember anymore. So,
Okay,
you know,
all right. Because if she can remember what the Matrix showed that there was a variety of different ethnicities that the timeless child was.
yeah. I don't know. I thought it was just meant to be a funny line. I get that people think it was tone deaf, but also the line was asked over 10 years ago by Clyde. So,
Yeah.
um, like I said, uh, really, like I love it's been like we've been recording. I don't know how we're going to do this in the edit, but we've been recording for over 40 minutes and we've answered two questions. So, Neve and
Mm-hmm.
Whitney, I hope you got bang for your buck out of your question. But we do have two other questions to do with the specials from the one and only Paul Kanawa of the Half Measures podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so let's try and get through these maybe a little bit quicker because otherwise we'll be
Yes.
here till midnight. So the first question, I actually struggle. I actually don't think I can answer because I don't watch trailers. I don't read spoilers. I don't read articles about casting or whatever. So I have no idea who's been teased for the Christmas special or for the upcoming new season. So I may just have to defer to you for this one, Paddy. And if you're going to say something
Mm.
spoilery, just give me the nod and I'll take my headset off and I won't listen to it. Who do you think picked up the golden tooth with the master in it?
So I've seen one potential person picked out or named,
Mm.
and I was like, okay. But then apparently there's a rights issue surrounding this particular character. Um,
Is it a character from the past that I would know, or is it a character that's been teased?
yeah, no, it's a character from the past that you would know of. I don't think you've seen her yet.
Okay, well in that case you can say it because I just haven't watched any of
Oh
the
yeah,
teasers for the new stuff, so I
yeah.
can talk about that.
Some people have said it might be the Rani,
Oh, okay, I've seen that being hinted at a lot, but the Rani's
but
been hinted at for like
apparently,
10 years.
yeah, but apparently, no, apparently there's an issue with it's Pip and Jane Baker, the ones that created the character. They held on to the rights, but they're both deceased, and their estate is apparently it makes Terry Nation's estate look like
Mm,
fucking kindergarten in terms of like the difficulty getting out of it.
mm,
Like who knows? I mean, like Jesus, the last time that Russell did this, and he literally did do this,
Mm.
it wasn't a toot though. It was just some random woman
Mm.
who was like part of a cult.
The difference is though that here they're stood on the very edge of a platform and there was nobody else there. I did see people thinking it was Kate because Kate was wearing red nail polish, except Kate went
Yeah,
inside before everyone else. That doesn't make any sense.
yeah.
Like I said,
Uh,
I know there's characters that have been teased, so if you want to talk about if you think they're one of them, I'll just take my headset off and not listen.
no, I haven't heard like I've heard no discourse about who it could be. See, a lot of people are trying to. So one person has been cast for the upcoming season, and there's been the
Mm.
usual dark side of the internet given out about this particular individual because they're a drag queen, but no
Mm.
indication as to who they're playing or anything like that. So they're feeling that it might be that person's character. But
Mm. Yeah, I don't have a horse in this race, Paul, because I have no idea, and I don't like speculate on those types of things. If I was to guess someone, I would probably guess the Rani would probably be my guess.
see, like
Um,
you would see, we know there's a big bad coming down the line. We do because the meat referred to
mm,
the boss. The toy maker said
yeah,
his legions are still out there. So like
mm,
it's it could be someone we've never seen before. It really could.
mm. I had an interesting thought when the Meep was talking about the boss. Um, there was a dropped story, well, not a drop, but an incomplete storyline from the Sarah Jane Adventures, which was going to reveal that
Hmm.
Sky, the daughter that Sarah Jane adopted in season 5, was a child of the trickster. And given that the trickster, was part of the pantheon of Discord, the trickster was played a part in Turn Left. I was like, imagine if it was Sky. Imagine if Sky was the big boss. Like it would just
Mm,
be so funny. Um, but
mm.
yeah, I
Yeah,
I'm afraid, Paul, I don't have any
we're
other
like
theory
we
to
are
go
very in
with.
the dark on this one because as I said the last time that this was done, which would have been the last of the Time Lords, the resolution didn't come
Mm,
until the end of time, which was the final special after David Tennant's last season. So that
mm,
was it 13, 1, 2, 3. That was like 17 episodes later that was revealed, and it
yeah,
was, as I said, it was just some.
yeah, because everyone thought it was the wife,
Yeah, everyone
right?
thought it was the wife, but no, it was just some random woman as part of a cult. So
Yeah.
it could be very something. It could be something similar here. Oh,
Mm,
right. Which was okay? Rank these three:
mhm.
the Master dancing to "I Can't Decide Whether You Should Live or Die" with the Doctor in a wheelchair,
Mm,
"Ra Ra Rasputin,"
mm.
or Toymaker's Spice Girls Tango.
Okay. Rasputin has like a special place in my heart because I love Boney M.
Yeah.
So I do though. I do, and I do. So the Rasputin thing always has a special place in my heart. Um, I kind of have to give it as much as like I said, I'm not a fan of his work of him, but as much as I don't like Neil Patrick Harris, I kind of have to give it to the Spice Girls because it is an attack as well as whatever.
Yeah.
It's not just whatever, but also it's him dancing with Kate and the look of sheer fucking like what the fuck on Kate's face.
Yeah. Then he spins her into a wall where she clacks her head really hard.
Yeah, so I think the fact that he uses it as an attack is great. Although didn't the Master do the same thing with Rasputin?
No,
Um,
it was as he was unveiling his evil plot.
yeah.
Like, yeah.
But yeah, Rasputin will always have a special place in my heart though because I love Boney M.
Um, I love Boney M as well. Yeah, you know that.
Mm,
Rasputin is probably my favorite Boney M song.
mm,
Um, but I think what tips it over, like the Toymakers one, is fantastic. Like, because
mm,
as you said, it's an attack. It's fucking creepy. It's like what he does to the two guards by turning them into a sort of serpent of fucking bouncing balls.
mm.
But I think what it is for me is with the Rasputin one is when the Cyberman and the Dalek look at each other as if to say, "What the fuck is this guy doing?" That just, and like as he's doing like the Cossack fucking dance, that no, like I have to give it to that.
I will say that, like, credit to, like, quote unquote the OG, right? The
Mm-hmm.
I Can't Decide was fucking brilliant at the time, but I think the other two are just like
Mm.
next level on top of it. Um, so the other question from Paul pertaining to the specials, and then we're done with the specials until we get
Mm-hmm.
to them, or,
Mm-hmm.
um, or until next year's rambling. We can ask this again.
Mm-hmm.
When will we see the 14th Doctor? When will we next see the 14th Doctor? And for me, this is an interesting question, Paul, because again, I don't read all the online discourse and stuff like that. I don't enjoy participating. It's why I'm glad that we're reviewing, like, all the old stuff first. Um, my gut is telling me that Russell really wants to get the Whoniverse up and running again. So we used to have Torchwood and Sarah Jane Adventures and Doctor Who, and then there was Class for a little while. I think Russell's trying to get that built up again. I think what where we're going to see the 14th Doctor again is likely going to be in comics or books, having adventures with Rose. Um, that is my gut on it. Potentially something animated maybe, or Russell working directly with Big Finish to do a series of audio stories that take place after the giggle, basically, on that timeline. I don't think we're going to see him, and I could be completely wrong. I don't think we're going to see them on screen again, except maybe like in another special in a couple of years, maybe they'll come back. Um, I kind of don't want them to come back on screen again. Possibly controversial statement, but I don't. I think this has been great. This is enough for me. How about you, Patty?
Um. So yeah, look, being 100% honest, physically seeing the 14th Doctor, I hope we don't see him again for a long time because, as I said, a part of the show is always about moving forward. Having the three Doctor special, great, it was wonderful. The five Doctor special, I'm looking forward to watching it again. The two Doctors, the what is it, the 50th anniversary special, the Power of the Doctor, seeing all these characters come back in some capacity, it's great. It's fun. Doing it right at the start of another Doctor's run, with someone that was as popular as David Tennant was, I think it kind of cuts the legs out from it under a small bit because it would be, I think it would be very short sighted of us, right, you and me now, to ignore the fact that Shooty's casting was controversial amongst the fandom.
Mm.
And I'm not, given over the last couple of years, I'm not going to say like the percentage of the fandom or whatever it is because there's factions and splitting. It's like any major fandom now, and it's kind of getting a bit depressing to look at, to be honest with you. But Shooty's casting was a bit controversial. No, I'm all for it. Like I've heard really good things about him as an actor. This is the first thing I've seen him in. Sorry, I tell a lie. I saw him in the Barbie movie, and I thought he was funny in that. I'm looking for. He's got a series. He's actually in another show that's starting up on Apple TV now in January. It's a World War II thing. He plays a Tuskegee Airman. Looking forward to that. But there's a lot of promise here. But again, it's untested waters, and unfortunately, we're in controversial times with this sort of stuff. Having the potential of David Tennant's Doctor coming back at any stage, I I don't want this thing of like the ratings are falling, better bring him back in, or other people saying like, oh, bring him back in. Can we, like, when are they going? Like, it's Shooty's time now. It's his time to shine. And look, I love David Tennant. I love David Stocker. I love Donna. Love that whole thing. Keep it to expanded media. Keep it to Big Finish audio. Keep it to comics. Keep it whatever. Give Shooty a season, 2 seasons before you bring the 14th back. And if you do bring him back, it's to I was thinking about it and the whole thing of the bi generation side of things, right? Now Russell's thing here has kind of maybe changed my perspective on this, but you're aware of the show Dragon Ball Z, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a race in it called the Namekians, and Namekians have the ability to fuse together. They can essentially become one person, one brand new entity, um, which will allow them to become stronger. All this kind of stuff. They still remain who they like. The more dominant personality, I believe, is the one that kind of survives, but they retain all the memories and everything of their other ones. But in Dragon Ball Z, there's a character called Piccolo who starts off as very evil, but he was the evil manifestation of another character, and then down the line he has to fuse back in with that character again, with Kami, and they become super powerful, and but they become complete. Like he's not evil, he's not overwhelmingly good. He's a complete person, or he's a complete individual. If David Tennant is to come back, I would like it to be a sort of I've done my healing, I'm happy with who I am. It's time for me to merge back in with Shooty again, to
Mm.
become the healed finished product.
Yeah, like I. So it was interesting, right? Back in August, I was at STLB, as you know, and our friends over at Mission Log, Norman John, did a panel on nostalgia and sort of the place of nostalgia in pop culture. Like they were talking about Star Trek, but it could be in anything. And I went up and I said my piece, and you can listen to the show over on Mission Log. But I got very odd on several occasions with Russell T Davies and the way he was handling the whole announcement of who the next Doctor was going to be. And it reminded me of the fact that I got very odd during Star Trek Picard Season 2. Halfway through Star Trek Picard Season 2, they announced the whole TNG cast is coming back for Season 3, taking, in my opinion, away from the characters that were present in Season 2, who we knew weren't fucking coming back once they announced that everyone else was coming back. Like, we knew that we weren't going to see them, or at least not, they weren't going to have any prominence. And I thought it was really unfair. Like, let these people have their fucking season and then do whatever. Um, I think with Shooty, obviously there's the controversial nature of Shushi's casting, and I say controversial since that people making it controversial. I don't think it's
Yes.
controversial.
Oh yeah. You know
He's an
that's
actor
what I meant.
playing a role.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's what I meant.
yeah,
There
yeah,
are people out there that just like it to be the
yeah,
old white person, and it's like no.
yeah. But again, he was announced during Jodie's final few stories,
Mm-hmm.
and there was all the press around Shooty and blah 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 blah. And I was just like, will you stop? Let Jodie finish her fucking run.
Mm-hmm.
Jodie wasn't doing the 60th, I think because she was pregnant. Shooty wasn't doing the 60th, we found out later on, probably because of the Barbie movie. And so then it becomes, oh, it's going to be David Tennant and Catherine Tate. And like, Jodie hadn't fucking finished yet. I'm like, let the woman have her fucking end of the show. And I do agree with you. I do not like this idea because this was the mindset that a big portion of the fandom, not gonna lie, very or at least a very vocal portion of the fandom had, which was Chibnall was shit. So they brought back in Russell, who's going to bring back in David Tennant and Catherine Tate because they were what made it good. And that just isn't the way to build a show that's meant to grow and move on. So I completely agree with you. I think it's about moving forward. I want Shooty to get a good season or two, maybe his entire run without seeing another Doctor again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And maybe in his final story, like you said, David comes back in and they recombine. Because I have seen people who've sort of said that Shooty seems very laid back and comfortable and calm in himself. And he said, we're Time Lords, we do rehab out of order.
Hmm.
So I've seen people who suggest exactly what you're talking about, that David like, David Tennant's doctor, as we see him at the end of the giggle, will eventually regenerate into Ncuti Gatwa. That will eventually happen. Um, and I would have liked to see that recombination, and that's just Ncuti just being like, oh, there's that other part of me. Oh, I'm good.
Hmm.
Whatever. Um, so when will we see the 14th Doctor? Hopefully not for fucking ages. And if we do, it's in Big Finish, comic
Yeah.
books, novels. I wouldn't mind like a cartoon or something, or a series of shorts, or
Hmm.
something like that,
Yeah.
kind of like the lockdown specials. Those would be quite cool, but not in the main show,
No.
and not in a show that could be considered um a replacement to the main show.
Yeah.
So
Like.
you imagine Sarah Jane Adventures, Doctor Who, Torchwood, they each had their own
Hmm.
lane. But if you had a spin-off with David Tennant and Catherine Tate,
Mm.
people just start thinking that that's what Doctor Who is, and they forget, and they might disregard Shooty and stuff. So I don't
Yeah.
want that either.
No.
Cool. Will we go on to Paul's other questions? And we also have a
Yes.
question from Sean.
Hmm.
So Paul's other questions are to do just the podcast that we've been doing for the last year. So Paul's question: you've reviewed a lot this year, from the Ribos operation to Black Orchid. What's been the most fun to review? I need to go back and look at the episode because I'm. We've done a lot this year, so thank you
Actually,
for reminding me which stories they were. By the way, Paul, it's
yeah.
great.
Actually, as we're speaking, Sean has sent in another question,
Okay,
uh, and it's funny.
okay,
It's yeah. So we'll carry on with Paul's thing first of all, and then we will move on because it's only fair. Um, this is a interesting one to answer because we've discovered that sometimes we have great crack reviewing stories that we're not particularly keen on. So, like, are we talking about what was the most fun to review in terms of like we actually enjoyed the story,
mm,
or what was like the one where we just had the most banter in the
mm.
last while? Um, I think what was the most fun to review in terms of like actual like a really good enjoyment. It's a toss up between Stones of Blood and Androids of Tara.
I was thinking the same.
Yeah.
Um, I was thinking the same.
In terms of the banter side of things, Jesus, I think we went to town on Destiny of the Daleks. But like, I think that was a sort of like, oh God, at the house like this, there's all you can do is laugh. um, yeah, so I think most fun experience was Stones of Blood Entrance to Tara because I think we really did fall in love with Mary Tam there.
Yeah,
Well, Mary Tam and Romana 1.
yeah,
And like so much so that you bought me the novelizations of those two stories, which I fucking love. Um, and yeah, so that was great. Yeah, so that would be my answer. I think from
yeah.
both those aspects.
I agree. I think Sons of West Tower is probably the one that I think we got into the most in terms of heart.
Hmm.
I think we enjoyed watching them. We enjoyed discussing them. I think in terms of, like I said, banter and whatever, I think City of Death was an interesting one because so many people
Oh,
fucking love it, and
oh,
we were
and
like,
like,
"What the fuck?"
like we were talking about Duggan as well, and his like his I'll just break everything fucking
Yeah,
mentality.
yeah. So that was
Oh,
good as well.
actually, do you know what was a lot of fun, and not because of anything to do with Doctor Who? It was Creature from the Pit because we recorded it on May 4th. So we just talked about how much we love Return of the Jedi.
Actually, another one that was really fun to talk about actually was the Horns of Nimon, because I got to go off on my
Yes,
whole thing about
you hate Theseus.
how Theseus is an asshole, and that was one. Um, yeah. So yeah, there's a couple of options there for you,
Yeah,
Paul. Um,
and for other listeners to go back and hear us either swoon being in love with a thing or just go off on
mm,
one of our fucking random tangents.
yeah. A sort of similar question then, what episode have you most enjoyed that you thought or heard was going to be rubbish or average? I think for me, it's probably Androids of Tara. Um, I think Androids of Tara is. I haven't. It's not that I thought that I heard it was going to be rubbish or average. I haven't heard anything about it. Do you know? To be honest, all of Mary Tam's stories tend to get glossed over and people don't talk about them. So the entire thing was great. Um, so I think for me, probably androids. I will say the one that everyone again like City of Death and Shadow are ones that everyone bang on about, and I was like, they're okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're nothing fucking fabulous. Um, what about you, Patty? Was there any one that you thought like that you heard was average, or because you'd watched them before that you thought on first viewing was average and you actually really enjoyed it on the second?
So two again spring to mind. One was the Ribos operation, Mary
Mm,
Time's first out the gate, because I remember thinking, like, not thinking much on it. But the one that actually kind of surprised me was Full Circle. I was actually
mm,
surprised with how high I rated that,
mm,
because coming into coming back into Adric again after having gone through his full cycle the first time, and like kind of going, oh god, it's Adric, and then being impressed with the actual themes in the story, the some of the characters, the darker elements of it. Um, yeah, so I think like that one was like, looking back, I'm really happy with
mm. I would say another one for me was Castrovalva.
it. Mm,
Um, because of preconceptions I had. I've talked before that I had this preconception about Tegan as a character. Um, and I loved her in Castrovalva. I thought she was absolutely fabulous, and that was a really pleasant surprise for me.
mm-hmm,
So that would probably be another one, along there that I was like, actually, Joe, this is really good. Um, last one from Paul. Looking back on the Who you've reviewed in 2023, so again, Rybos up to Black Orchid. What is better or worse about Doctor Who with the fifth Doctor in the TARDIS compared to the fourth Doctor? That's a very interesting question. And I'm going to do a what's worse, first of all, which is from the stories we've seen of Peter Davison. What's worse is the companion connections, I think.
mm-hmm,
Um, they're all over the place. And that may be down to, we've talked about before, the production order of the season was completely higgledy-piggledy. Um, so I do think the companion relationship with the Doctor is worse in the current TARDIS than it was with the Fourth Doctor and any of his companions.
mm,
In terms of what's better, I'm kind of struggling to find a better at the moment. Now, this is only because we've only done like 5 stories, right?
mm-hmm,
So it's a bit unfair to compare like one, two, three, four. It is 5 stories with like 12 or more. Like, how many is this? Six, 12. Yeah, to compare 6 stories with 19 stories to like identify what's better is a bit difficult for me. I'm sure there are things that I will like more about the Peter Davison era compared to Tom's, but for now, I think it's still trying to find its feet. I can't really answer that question honestly
yeah,
from a better perspective.
yeah. No, I'm the same. Like, in terms of what's worse is the he doesn't have a friendship with any
Mm,
of them. So, like Nissa is his protege essentially at this
mm,
stage. Adric is his ward, and Tegan is his responsibility. But no,
mm,
I don't think any of them are his friends.
mm,
But and like it's like well, one thing you could say that is maybe better is we've transitioned out of a time where the guy playing the doctor had an awful lot going on that kind of impacted the work on the role essentially, between
mm,
his illness and his dislike of people behind the scenes. Sometimes you could see it bleed over, sometimes you
mm,
wouldn't even know that at all, but you're coming in with someone that has a fresh enthusiasm for the role,
mm,
so someone that's kind of essentially giving their all.
mm.
But yeah, I think when we'll be able to definitely answer a lot, like with a lot more in-depth analysis when we come to our Peter Davison rambling down the line.
Yeah. Like this question actually ties into Sean's question, which again, Sean, thank you for the question, but I would kind of struggle to answer it the same way, which is what do we think of the Davison era in general? Um, and for me, I have to say it's a bit higgledy-piggledy. There's been some amazing moments.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like going back to uh
Castrovalva.
Kinda. No, go back to
Oh yeah.
Kinda and the whole thing with Tegan in her mind and whatever. Like that
Mm-hmm.
was fucking amazing. Tegan was great in Castrovalva. I think Nissa has just sort of been chugging it along, having great moments here and there. Um, but then it swings very heavily in the other direction as well. Um, and so I think for now, of the 5 stories I've seen, it's higgledy-piggledy is the only thing I can say of it. But we're only 5 stories in, so
Yeah.
how about you? Any thoughts in general that we haven't mentioned
Um,
already?
I think the the one thing that is very stark, um, and we've had no real explanation as to why, but it's the complete 180 on his relationship with Adric.
Yeah.
Like he treats Adric like shit. Like, and it's and then but like, and it's like you also have Adric. I don't know whether it's rebelling or he's just like he's rebelling against the fact that the doctor's treating him like shit, or he's just acting like the spoiled child, or like the know-it-all because, as we talked before about how he feels potentially challenged by Nissa's intelligence or Tegan's maturity. So like you have that component of it, and it creates like this. It creates a friction that you normally see in shows with a much larger supporting cast.
Mm,
Like you can you can understand like why, say, like if we go to Star Trek, there's like what, like maybe half a dozen episodes where Picard has done something that Riker didn't agree with, and so they're pretty much on edge until they have their resolution,
mm,
whatever. But like you know what was done.
mm,
Here it's like, what has Adric done to make you treat him like crap? And also, other than what we're theorizing as a genius adolescent's ego being challenged,
mm.
like where is this kind of complete He-Man woman hater aspect coming from?
Yeah. It's gonna be interesting to see how it develops. To be honest, I'm more interested in next season. I know we still have two stories to go in this season with Peter Davison, but I'm more curious to see next season. Like once they've had a season under their belt, hopefully the production order will get a bit better next season.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the production order, like that's a thing. I think is severely impacting Peter
Mm.
Davison's era. Stuff being shot out of sequence, and they're being told to change their relationship status as a result of it.
Yeah, and when we say stuff, we don't just mean like obviously because most TV shows are shot, but really like the first, like, the regeneration story was like the third story filmed,
Yeah.
and like it, particularly when you have, and I don't mean to pick out these two people in particular, but just to give it into a bit of context, like Janet Fielding hadn't done a lot of acting at this point.
Mm.
Neither had um um
Matthew Waterhouse.
Matthew
No.
Waterhouse, and Matthew
Mm.
Waterhouse is also very young.
Mm.
So trying to get them to build this relationship and, like, on camera while filming it, oh, in this story you've only just met him, and in this story you've been traveling for three stories, but you might not even know what the script, what happened in between. They don't know what happened in the previous story, whatever. It really isn't helping it. So that's why I'm saying I'm kind of withholding judgment until next season, in a way.
I think Peter Davison's era so far can be summed up in Tegan's Charleston. It's a lot of forward and a lot of back, but you're going nowhere.
Did you say you had another question
Oh yes,
from
from
Sean?
Sean. He this is a question that he has been holding on to for a couple of years.
Okay.
Just in general, is he would like to know who is the best version of the Master and why is it John Sim? Sean loves John Sim, by the way. He loves John Sim's Master.
I will be honest, I do kind of agree with him. When I, and this could be just because the way I was introduced to the Master. Obviously I watched
Mm-hmm.
the David Tennant era first before I went back. Um, there is something about John Sim where the Master's at a point where I think Russell T Davies was very clear in what he wanted the Master to be, which is fucking psychotic.
Mm-hmm.
And Johnson plays that really fucking well.
Yeah.
And I think he did the job fantastically. If we look at um uh Anthony Ainley, obviously we've only just started with him. We haven't had a whole lot. He is very panto, which I love
Mm-hmm.
in its own way. Um, and then before that, we've Roger Delgado, and Roger Delgado obviously originated the role, but fuck me, that man made, not Roger Delgado, but like that version of the Master, made questionable ally choices,
Mm.
over and over
Like,
again.
technically speaking, what is it? Like, if we've gone with what we've seen so far, the best version of the Master was Jeffrey Beavers in his, you know, burnt to a crisp
Yeah,
pepperami phase
that's
because
true.
he was the most intelligent.
That's
Yeah.
true. That's true. Um, so I mean, I would kind of agree that John Sim is probably, uh, I think, the best in terms of they knew what they wanted to do with the character,
Mm.
and he had an arc, and he had a backstory that we get to see, and it made sense. Whereas with the others, it's different writers, different producers, and I don't know. Um, in terms of the other ones that come after John Sim, obviously we have
Michelle
Michelle
Gomez.
Gomez. To us, I haven't seen a whole lot of her. I didn't watch a lot of that run. From what I've seen, she's brilliant, but I couldn't speak in context. And Sasha Dewan did Rasputin, so like,
Mm.
you know.
I like Sasha Dewan's Master. He just reminded me of an evil version of Patrick Troughton. Um, Michelle Gomez. I recently watched a video just kind of discussing uh, Sherlock and also like Twice Upon a Time by the same person, and I've just noticed some just like thing with I until we go back and watch it,
Hmm.
my impression of Michelle Gomez from my memory is now a small bit colored by this video that I watched, where it's basically she's very much like the Irene Adler character
Hmm.
from Sherlock, and it's like it just speaks to writing and stuff like that. And I don't think it's time fair to get into that now until we actually go to that era.
Hmm.
But I personally speaking, I think Michelle Gomez would have been much better as her own character.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't the master.
Mm.
Um, and I get what it was laying the foundation for Jodie coming in because of the gender change. But I think it would have you could still do that, but you could um so yeah, I think Michelle's thing is just a small bit colored for me at the moment. Anthony, yeah, absolutely, very panto, very Richard III type thing. Um, Delgado, like he was so suave and debonair and so fucking stupid. Uh, like an entire season of trusting the fucking vicious aliens that would inevitably turn on him. And each successive story, he did the exact same fucking thing. Oh god, it's so fucking frustrating. Um, but John Sims' characterization of the Master was it took hallmarks, like it took the panto aspect, with the
Mm.
over the top um scissor sister dance routine, or my personal thing is like when he's wearing the gas mask, everyone else is choking around him, and like that guy goes, "You're insane!" He just gives the big thumbs up. um, but what I love about John Sims' character, from what you've seen, I've seen a bit more to what you've seen. Um, it's I love John Sims' character in the End of Time because Russell's thing was, yeah, as you said, yeah, he wanted to portray him as insane, but it was insane by the machinations of the Time Lords.
Yeah.
And you saw this, like there's an awful lot of discourse in that story. Like, the Wilf talking to the Doctor about, oh, going back to the specials, it was so nice seeing Bernard again for just that
Yes.
small, and it's just he wasn't in good health, and unfortunately he passed away before they could do, I think, everything they wanted to do with the character. But it was so nice that the Doctor actually got to see him again.
Mm. The one thing that I find about that actually is very interesting is that I watch a lot of like new rock stars and Screen Crush and those type of things who do
Yeah.
like Easter egg things. Um, and all the American reviews call him Bernard Cribbins. I was
Mm,
like, his name's Bernard.
Bernard. um,
No offense to our American listeners, but his name's Bernard.
no, Bernard. The amount of times I've listened to Right Said Fred since like watching at the end of World Beyonder, but um, but the Masters thing of at the end when he's facing down Rassilon,
Mm.
as played by Timothy Dalton, who I'm stating it now, I think is the best James Bond. There you go, Paul. um, so yeah, no, but it's like when he's facing him down, and there's just this wonderful, like you get the Master trying to be like oh well, let me trying to weasel his way into a better deal, and then he just goes, "Do what? Fuck it, enough's enough,"
Mm.
and he has his heroic redemption esque moment.
Mm.
But yeah, so yeah, no, like I think at the moment Johnson probably is in the front running for being the best master. Although I will say, I think in terms of like actually being a good villain, Jeffrey Beaver's one is like by
Yes.
far, yeah. Uh,
Okay, well, we move on to some random shite.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions for you. I don't know if you have any questions for me. Um, if we didn't have to worry about full-time jobs, which we currently do, which is why I actually looked back, we only did like we did very few episodes this year just because life got in the way.
I think we did
Um,
like 20.
it'll be 22 plus a couple of ramblings.
Mm.
So sorry, dear listeners, that we only got 22 plus a couple of ramblings, but life got in the way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if we didn't have to worry about full-time jobs, what non-Who related show, and we've talked about this before, but I want you to pick, as of today, I want you to pick one. What non-Who related show would you like to do a podcast about that follows the same general format that we use now?
Um, I have an answer,
Mm.
and I'll get you to guess what you think my answer is. I'll give you a hint. It may not be the one you're thinking of.
Well, see, I have because I also have an answer because obviously it's my question. Actually, I have two. I have one that is very much in keeping with going back to the beginning and watching something from an older time, and I have one that's coming out very soon,
Mm.
like next week.
Yep.
Is that the same one?
Uh, I think you might be on the money with your first one.
Is it Mash?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would really like to go back and do a MASH podcast because MASH, for those of you that are listening that aren't aware, is set during the Korean War, and it's set in a mobile army surgical hospital, and it is made up of a diverse group of characters, some of whom were drafted. The majority of them are all doctors. They're all
Mm.
surgeons, and there's some orderlies, some base personnel, things like that. Some are drafted in, some are actual career military, and for the first three seasons of the show, it is a bit more comedic.
Mm.
It then ventures into the realm of, I would classify it as a dramedy. I know what they
Mm.
call it a sitcom, but I would classify it more as a dramedy because as it goes on, it deals with some incredible themes. Because this was being aired as Vietnam was happening,
Yeah.
and even though it's set in a like the war in Vietnam, sorry, the Korean War, which was in the 50s, like it's kind of like Star Trek used to
Mm.
do. It's talking about stuff that's happening right now, and the stuff it highlights, you're kind of wondering like that. Jesus Christ, like how can people think that way? You
Yeah.
know, um, and like there's again getting to talk about the character growth of Charles Emerson Winchester.
Mm.
I would really like that. You know.
Or Hot Lips.
Yeah, gee, I continually forget how much Hot Lips grows over it.
Yeah. Because she goes from being Hot Lips to being Margaret.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you know?
Uh,
But getting to
I
talk
think that
about Potter would just be amazing. And
yeah, sure, like Sherman T. Potter is just like Harry Morgan brings so much to that show,
yeah.
and like himself and oh Mike Farrell,
Mm.
who plays BJ Honeycutt, when BJ and Potter come in at the same time, and they bring two different um they're two very different characters. One is drafted, one is
Mm.
career military. But like you some stuff comes out of BJ that you think more so from Potter and vice
Mm.
versa. So like it's great to watch, and like I would highly recommend anyone to watch Mash.
Yeah. I do think like when we get to the end of this adventure and we catch up,
Mm-hmm.
I do think the next one on the block, if we were to do it, would have to be Mash. Like you and I love the show so much. We've talked about episodes on that show so much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it has so many. Like I'm just even just talking about it. There's so many interesting just scenes that are immediately coming to me. I mean, the whole like finale is
Jesus
just
Christ,
insane.
I I watched the finale for the first time when I think I was in my mid 20s, and I bawled my eyes out for most of it
Yeah.
because
Um.
it's just
Yeah. Or the developing friendship slash potential romance between Hawkeye and Margaret. Um. I I, I always have in my head the episode where um she finds out that Donald is leaving her, or
mm-hmm.
that Donald is cheating on her, and he's freaking out because they've increased the number of rotation points you need before you
Mm-hmm.
can rotate out. And they're both kicking these cans like towards each other. And then he goes off and does a Hawkeye thing, and then he comes back, and they just have this thing where they all dye their hair red, and it's a big thing. And like to be able to discuss those, or like discussing, I mean, the whole thing with the finale and the chicken on the bus. Um, I'm sure for you it would hit very different now than it would have when we've discussed it previously. So I do think that one's there. But in terms of a show that I think we'd both love to review in this format that's coming out is Percy Jackson.
Yes, because actually, before I answer that,
Mm,
if we were to when if we do the Mash podcast, we have to start off with the movie
yes.
because the movie gave us the immortal pickup line, which I don't think any of us that have watched that movie have actually ever used.
No.
But bring me that one, the sultry bitch with the fire in her eyes.
Yeah. Other than
Yeah,
Panda using it in RP, I don't think I've actually heard anyone use it in
yeah,
reality.
no.
Um, but yeah, but the Percy Jackson
The,
series on Disney Plus is
it,
starting next week,
and
and
because they've made it into a TV series, so they're going to give it
yeah,
a chance to breathe.
yeah,
And the casting looks incredible.
mm,
Um, it will be interesting to see it going forward, though, because unfortunately, Lance Reddick passed away earlier on in the year, and Lance
oh,
Reddick was playing Zeus.
oh, that's
So
unfortunate.
yeah, and but it's got Toby Stevenson is in it
Mm,
as Poseidon. Adam Copeland, also known as Edge, is playing Ares. I think that's fantastic. Jason, I feel like I'm going to ruin his last name, Mantatakis. The guy who plays Jankin Pog in
mm.
Prodigy is playing is Dionysus, aka Mr. D. Yeah, it's just
But
got a really good cast.
I think just because like they're making it into a series, which is great, because the Percy Jackson movies were a bit shit. But because you and I love the Rick Riordan books so much,
Hmm.
and we know them so well, um, I think to have a show airing live that we could do would be great. But we just sadly don't have the time to do it.
Yeah, no.
We barely have time to do this. And so, but it is the one show that, because like obviously, it would be great if we could review, if we were able to review Jodie live, but we wanted to do the from the beginning thing.
Mhm.
Um, and we maybe could have done like a mission log thing where we did like supplementals or live shows where we talked about the current run of
Mhm.
shows and stuff. But again, we don't have the time to do that because we like this is not our job. This is our hobby
Mhm.
that we do on the side. Um, but I don't know, like I want to be able to nerd out about Percy Jackson with you, which we'll
I
do anyway. But I want to be able to
yes.
like invite conversation from other people because in our friend group we have a lot of people that we can talk about Doctor Who with. We have a lot of people we can talk about Star Trek with. So like Vicky and Alan and you know apparently my
Mhm.
brother-in-law, which I didn't realize that we could have had in-depth
And
conversations all the time.
Shane as well. Shane is a big Star Trek geek.
Shane, Paul and everyone. I mean, there's a lot of people we can talk about Star Trek and Star Wars and those kind of things. I haven't met anyone else other than you that's connected with the writing books in the same way I have. It's kind of like our thing, and I'm like, I would
Uh,
love for us to be able to share that with other people and like get other people involved.
I just want the show to be successful enough to get to the party ponies because party ponies party for life. I fucking adore the party pony. My wife Sarah started reading the books recently enough,
Mm.
and I was like, "Oh, tell me when you get to this bit because I want to know your reaction because it's one of my favorite parts of the entire in every book he's fucking written. In like what is it now? It's 21 core books across the different mythologies. Five, five, three, and three.
5, 5, 3, 3, 5.
Yeah. So yeah,
Well,
21.
actually, there's another book now that's been added to the Percy Jackson stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's technically 6.
Yeah.
So yeah, so 15, 21, 22 ish.
Yeah. And if you want to include the Sun and the Stars, or sorry, the Sun and the Star,
Yeah.
that's right. But yeah, no, across all these books, just as like I think they appeared twice, but
Mm.
God, the party ponies I fucking love.
Yeah, but I really
Um,
wanted to do well because I wanted, like, I like Percy Jackson. I like Heroes of Olympus more.
Yep.
I love the Kane Chronicles and I love Magnus shit. Trials of Apollo, I like. I like that
Hmm.
whole uh, Greek and Norse or Greek and Roman grouping. But
Hmm.
I have a particular place in my heart for the Kane Chronicles and Magnus Chase, and I want them to
Yes.
make those into shows as well. So
Yep.
that
So
is
same here.
that would be the one thing if we were to do live week on week
Hmm. I
podcast
actually,
or YouTube or something. I'd want it to be that.
yeah, I like Heroes of Olympus is so good. Like like Frank Zhang
Mm.
is, he is, I think, my spiritual avatar in that series. I think, yeah, the first time I told that to you, like, you were like, "Yep."
Yeah, like
Um,
there's other shows as well. Like obviously we've talked about Sharp a lot.
mhm,
Um, and I'm sure like obviously we could do the Star Trek thing, although like that's mission logs area, but we could do it as well, and we could do. I think there's something about Mash, and there's something about the Ryden verse that's just
mhm,
so us. It's so team. Do you know those
yep.
two things?
Mhm. No, it absolutely is. Um, just because like people might be curious, the party ponies are essentially a group of surfer bro boozed up centaurs that just like, like essentially they're like a frat house
Mm.
of centaurs that just like to fuck shit up, but they're good guys.
Um,
uh
yeah, if you have any interest whatsoever in Greek, Roman, Egyptian, or Norse mythology, like you have to read the Rick Riordan books. Yeah, they're aimed at like a middle school age sort of Harry Potter esque target grouping. But they're so good. They're so
I
good, and I will say Rick does representation very well.
He does, because the first series of books, so Percy Jackson and the Olympians, which is the TV
Mm,
series, come out. That is the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone
mm,
arc. Everything that comes after, the Heroes of Olympus, Trials of Apollo, Kane Chronicles, Magnus Chase, they all handle such really like some dark themes, some teams that are close to home for like
mm.
you, for me, and he handles it so well.
Yeah,
Like, and it doesn't feel forced or contrived or anything. It's beautiful to see.
yeah. He's so good. He's amazing. So yeah, that was my first random shite question. Do you have any random shite questions? I have a few, but do you have any?
You go through your ones first, and then we can go on to my one then.
Okay. Who would win in a fight, a Cyberman or a single Borg drone?
Whoever's quickest off the draw,
Fair enough.
because a single Borg drone needs to be able to. The Borg collective can only adapt at the sacrifice of a drone. If it's
This
just
is
a
true.
one-on-one fight, if it's just a one-on-one fight, it's whoever's the Han Solo or Mad Reynolds of this fucking particular thing.
Hmm, cool.
Actually, that's a fucking bullshit question for you. Uh, who shoots first, Han or Mal?
Hmm. Are we talking Star Wars: A New Hope Han, or are we talking like?
We are talking the original theatrical version, Han Solo.
I think Han.
Cool.
If we're talking later Han, like Return of the Jedi Han, I would say Mal,
Yeah.
but Han.
Yeah.
It's always Han. At that time of his life, it's always Han.
Hmm.
Um. Okay. If you could go back in time and change
Hmm.
anything about our earliest episodes, what would you change?
Oh, I think the only thing that kind of springs to mind from an actual, um,
Other than our sound quality, which we're aware is
yeah,
often shocking.
no,
Apologies.
well, see, you started off with you started off with a professional microphone, and then you got me one for my birthday, which was very early into our run.
Yeah.
So I think from the Aztecs onwards, we sound
Mm.
all right.
Except for
Um,
now when I don't have access to my microphone, so I sound like shit.
yes.
Sorry.
I honestly don't know, because of the fact that the format works,
Mm.
but I think I think Paul pointed this out, is when we started off, we were barely breaking an hour
Mm,
on like four parters. And then just, what is it, last week?
mm,
We went nearly 2 hours on a two-parter.
yeah,
I think we have, oh, I don't know if matured is the right word. I think our ability to read into the themes and stuff that's going on has just become a bit more nuanced or a bit better. And like,
yeah,
because like, that's not to say the earlier episodes, like, oh, there wasn't as many, heavy hitting themes or interesting character dynamics. No, fucking bullshit. Like, we love the Hartnell Hour. The Hartnell Hour
mm,
is like, as we've confirmed on air in our Tom rambling, that he has taken the spot as number one Doctor.
mm-hmm,
First two seasons of Hartnell are fucking fantastic. Um, and like, you've got stories like Marco Polo, which deals with, it was the first thing I think where we ever came to a disagreement about what constitutes villain or prominent character, things
mm.
like that. Um, so I think just like our insights have just become a bit more fine tuned.
Yeah. I actually had the same thing in mind. I was thinking back over because you messaged me during the week being, I can't believe we did 2 hours on Black Orchid, and I was like, fuck, we did. Um, and it's the one thing where because we both love, particularly those first two seasons of the Hartnell era so much. I think the fact that we did them first, because we're obviously going chronological order, part of me kind of feels like we did them a bit of a disservice because I think we've become much more comfortable talking about themes and other parts. We've sort of realized that people listen to us every week. They're happy to listen to 2 hours. I'm sure people skip around and jump bits, whatever. That's fine, but whatever. Um, but I think when we first started out, we were very conscious of how long the episodes were.
Mm,
And part of this is because, at least from my perspective, a lot of people know this. We took the general idea for this show and the general format, though we do ours a bit more. The nuances are different. Is based off Mission Log,
mm.
the Roddenberry podcast, and those guys aim for about an hour. And the guys have done like in their Patreon bits and stuff like that. They've talked about how, like, sometimes, you know, Rod was so messing with, like, hey, you're kind of going over the hour mark on this one. Like, can we get it under? And I think we were very focused on no one will listen to us prattle on for 2 hours. And I do kind of regret that we weren't as comfortable in ourselves
Mm.
in the earlier episodes that, like, the rambling for Ian and Barbara is like 40 minutes
Yeah,
for
like
the
we
two of
used
them.
to. I think, like, I think we're fucking safe now to
Mm,
say it. But like, we would sometimes do the ramblings on our hour-long lunch break
yeah.
when
So, like,
when we were working from home.
yeah, and like, or we do them after we recorded the full episode. We just do it afterwards.
Hmm.
We could never do that now. Um,
Yeah,
so I do kind of regret that a bit. Um, but that also comes with time and progress and whatever. And it's not like we've stopped talking about the Hartnell era or about Ian and
no,
Barbara or Susan or Vicky or anyone. We mention them all the time, so they're fine. They get their licks in. But um, I do kind of wish we just sort of said fuck it
yeah,
and just talked. You know, I
hmm,
think a lot of our comfort with it now actually comes from people like Paul and Shane and stuff like that, who, are like, we occasionally mention, like, oh, we went on a random tangent between segments, do you know? Because, obviously people realize when the break music comes in, Paddy and I have a separate conversation and then we pick up again. Um, but the length of those separate conversations have gotten smaller and smaller.
yeah,
I think it's because Paul wanted to know what the fuck we were talking about. you know. Um, So yeah, that's one thing I would probably, if we could do it all over again, I'd say don't put a time limit on it. Also, it came from the fact that we used to do two on, one
Two
off,
off,
two
two
on,
off,
two off. So
two
we
off.
used to
Yeah.
record two stories back to back
Hmm.
in one day, and then we'd take the following week off. And then we'd record two stories, and then we take the following week off. And now we just do one a week. And if it means we
Hmm.
miss a week because I'm away or because work gets busy, or it's like fuck it, um, we don't get paid to do this. So.
Yeah, because like I remember when we did what was it? Oh, Dalek's Master Plan.
Mm,
I recorded the summary for parts 1 to 4 separately. I did
mm,
that on just on a random day because you were watching everything sequentially, so it only made the most sense that we would just do the summary for the
mm.
parts 5 to 12. I was going, Jesus Christ. But actually, one of my favorite things about that was Shane messaged us to say he was in a shop listening to us as he was in the queue, and then it got to me going, part 12, thank fuck. Which one he just burst out laughing. um, so yeah. Um, yeah, like it's like but I don't know. I think it's like anything like that. The more comfortable you get with the stuff that you're doing,
Mm.
the more you don't mind drifting into that extended time run.
Yeah,
Because if the point needs to be talked about, the point needs to be talked about.
yeah, yeah.
And I think, like, for stuff like the Time Meddler, I think we actually had a good discussion about
Mm.
that aspect that you brought up earlier on. I don't think we shortchanged it.
No.
And I think as time went on, when we started getting comfortable being in that hour 20 plus mark, we were I think we found our groove then.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and like yeah, like and who knows? Like maybe we could be overselling it. Maybe we actually just hit all the teams. We were just less verbose, or we
Possibly.
we or we talked less random shite.
There's people out there being like, "Can you go back to the hour, lads? Like
Yeah,
seriously, can you go back to the hour?" No,
yeah,
fuck you. We're
yeah. Uh,
um. Okay, I have one more question for you, but I want to. It sort of ties into that. So one of the things. So when we first started doing this, I remember you were like, "Let's do a podcast." I'm like, "Fucker, slow down. We need to talk about the domain and all this other shit." And you were just like, "But let's go." And one of the things we talked about very early on is would we do a Patreon or something like that?
mhm,
And I remember the reason I gave for why I didn't want to do it, which is you and I have jobs. And I
mhm,
wouldn't want to take money off people if we weren't able to deliver what they're expecting and
mhm.
have the extras and the behind the scenes and whatever. Um, do you think we've undersold ourselves by not going down, like, because we don't do a lot of promotion either. Like we have Twitter, we have Instagram, thanks Paul. Um,
We have Facebook as
we
well,
have
and
Facebook. We don't, we don't spend money on promotion. We don't um chase it. We sort of go with natural growth, and we have
mhm.
consistent
but
numbers every week that we're happy
we
with.
do, and like we do a small bit of word of mouth as well.
Yeah,
Whenever we're yeah.
yeah. Do you think we've undersold ourselves by not going down the route of you know Patreon and big promotion and merch and whatever? Because we do have stickers that we made for ourselves
Yeah.
as an
uh,
experiment that I did.
um. Well, like, see, part of me kind of would go, oh, it'd be fun to do a Patreon because how many times have we like just segued from the so like for people listening, the flow from the trivia to the character discussion is
Mm,
a matter of seconds. Sometimes it's 10, 15 minutes before we get into it because we talk about something we heard that day
Mm,
like that's relevant to our interests,
mm,
or we might have like watched a movie or seen a gone down a YouTube rabbit hole or something like that. And I know some people are interested in our in between
mm.
banter because it drives them fucking batty. Um, but like I think if the demand was there, I think I'd be up for doing a Patreon, because I know we do have a good listener base. Like
Mm,
it's like it's not stratospheric, but like we have people that tune into us every week, and I know that some people just enjoy listening to us, and some people engage when we have our regular people that contribute, such as Paul and Shane, and then we've had people that have dipped their toes into water once or twice, and
mm,
um, we've had people thank us for turning them on to the classic era,
mm,
because all they ever saw was the snippets or reconstructions and things like that. But when we made the conscious effort to recap the missing ones and watch the loose canon, or
mm,
the loose canon reproductions, I think it turned people on to kind of, oh, I want to go back and experience these stories in some capacity.
mm.
Um, and so yeah, like in terms of doing the Patreon, if people want it.
Yeah, like I still have the same hesitancy that I had before, because like I I mean I
I
have to commend Dan and Paul over at Half Measures, because those guys
mhm,
also have full-time jobs,
mhm,
and yet they churn out a new episode every fucking week.
mhm,
Um, and I think because ours requires so much effort, because you have to watch the story, you have to write the recap, I have to do the trivia, we have to put together our notes and whatever. It's it's a full measure, as the boys would say. Um, I would feel very guilty if there was, and it happens, that there's weeks where we don't
mhm,
post, and I personally find social media quite exhausting. Um, so I would feel very bad if we couldn't engage. But if you were willing to do it, I probably wouldn't mind as much. Um, like you could just take care of all of that, and
yeah.
um, I just
Yeah,
reap in the benefits of not having to pay
yeah.
as much every month for the tools that we use.
No, I have no problem, engaging with our adoring public.
Yeah,
Um, but I think, no, as you said, like it wouldn't be fair to people to charge for something and then go intermediate at times without delivering on it.
yeah, and that's the one thing that I struggle with all of that is we have our priorities. We love doing this podcast. We do.
Hmm.
And we're dedicated to doing it. We're dedicated to getting to the end and catching up with ourselves eventually. But we also have our priorities. Your priority is your family. So is mine. Our work is very time intensive. Also, mental health is very important. Like
Hmm.
sometimes, I get home from work and I'm like, Paddy, I'm just not up for it today. I'm just not.
Yeah,
No.
like so, like and like thing is, like sometimes like there have been times where both of us are really excited, and then it comes the day of, and then one of us like could be sick, or one of us could just be having a shitty day, and we don't want to carry that on to
Mm.
the air.
Like to give an example, Black Orchid. Um, is a two-parter that we shot over the course of what, 3 weeks? 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Because something came up and we were like, nope, have to cut it. We'll pick up
Yep.
next time. So I don't know. I don't know why I was thinking about it the other day. I think it was because um I was looking on Discord. So obviously we've got the Mission Log Discord, we've got the Half Measure Discord that we're part of as well. Um, and I was like, oh, like did we miss a trick by not doing it? Should we be doing it? And then my thing is just like it's a big commitment, and even if it was just $1 a month, I wouldn't want to take people's money without being able to deliver. I don't
Yeah.
know. I'd feel very weird about it.
No, like you want to give like, no, in terms of the content that we do deliver, I think we would deliver bang for buck.
Mm,
But in terms of actually getting it on the regular basis,
yeah,
yeah, that would be a concern.
yeah. So, yeah, so those are my random shite questions. That last one went into somewhat serious territory. Um,
Hmm.
but we've been talking for an hour and 56 minutes. What are your random shite questions?
So I kind of gave the game away yesterday when I asked this, and I feel like I'll give you an opportunity to rethink.
Mm,
So we know that the Weeping Angels, in their original run, they, as the doctor said, they kill with kindness. What they do is they displace you in time. They send you back into the past like at a random time, but they do it so that if you will die in the past, essentially,
mm,
and they feed off the potential of your life energy in the present.
mm.
That's how they sustain themselves. And I asked Trish what era, if she had the choice, what era would she like a weeping angel to send her back into?
Yeah. And for some reason, my brain went, would I be the same age I am now? And obviously, I would be. That was a stupid question. I don't know why that entered my head. Um, and I really because like a part of me is like, oh, I'd love to go back and like watch the moon landing, or I'd love to do this. And I was like, but you have to fucking live in it. It's the
Mm-hmm.
important thing.
Yeah.
And so, given the fact that I'm 35 now, nearly 36, um, I do kind of have to go with my answer that I gave you yesterday, which would be late 70s, early 80s. Which would still mean I'd probably, if I have to die in my past compared to now, would probably mean I do still die in like my 70s or something. Um, but I would probably have to say this out because, like, you know, I know a lot of people put on like rose tinted glasses about like bygone eras and whatever, and I'm like, well, like, oh, like maybe the 1920s. I'm like, oh, 1920s in Ireland wasn't fucking great.
Mm, yeah. No.
You know, um, I was like, oh, like maybe like the 1950s. I'm like, oh yeah, you know, like LGBT rights were great.
Hmm.
You know,
Not to forget that whole TB thing.
yeah. You know, like, there's just a whole thing of it. And I'm like, oh, I'd love to see like the pyramids being built. And I was like, yeah, but like disease and death,
Mm,
basically. So I would probably stick with my original because also from my perspective, that means like, if I say like 1977, the original release of Star Wars, getting to watch TNG on first release,
mm,
getting to watch the original Battlestar Galactica and stuff like that, while at the same time having the potential to still see the revival era of Doctor Who.
mm,
Like I said, I wouldn't live till now because that's the whole point.
mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'd still probably live well into my
Yeah.
60s or 70s.
Yeah, so you get to rewatch the revival era of Doctor Who, and then you have the worst PTSD when you watch Blink. Yeah, you motherfuckers that did this to me.
How about you?
Oh,
What's yours?
so like this is the thing now is that like I am like I love history. I'm a history buff, and I'd there's so many periods that I'm fascinated by, but they all come with their own unique pitfalls. And you kind of made the point that 1920s Ireland, not a great time at all. 1960s, like even if you're going into the 70s and 80s, you brought up LGBT, still not a great
Mm,
time for
no.
rights. Like, and like you're faced with the reality of the fact that if you get sent back in time, you're a woman back in time
Mm,
when things aren't also fucking great for you, you know? When in order to get the fucking point across, a woman had to throw herself in front of a horse at a
yeah.
fucking, yeah. Um, I'm almost like that Homer Simpson thing, I'm a white male age between this and this. Everyone listens to what I say. Um, so, like, if I could, I would like to go back to probably the golden age of exploration because when I know it comes with the fucking tacked
The
on
golden
thing.
age of colonization.
Yeah, yeah, no, but no, actually, no, sorry, not. I won't say colonization.
Mm,
When seafaring was still a thing,
mm,
because you have an opportunity to go back and see like just some cultures that are still in their ascendancy before colonization happens, unfortunately.
Mm,
And just to go back and kind of just see them in their heyday before,
mm.
pricks that would have looked like me would come over and fuck things up. Either that, or I'd actually go back to, when is it? About the 1860s,
Mm.
so that I'd have a chance to go to when Japan was going through the Meiji Restoration, when they were becoming a bit more westernized, and just go and just see that transfers was happening, that transference of ideology.
So, a somewhat connected thing, right? If I had a TARDIS,
Hmm.
I had one trip in the TARDIS, I would like to go back to the creation of Newgrange.
Yeah, oh, that's a good one.
What the fuck were they doing? And how did they do it?
Hmm.
And the reason why I say I'd want a TARDIS for that and not just the Weeping Angels, because I need to be able to fucking understand what they're saying.
Yes,
Um, I would love to go back to the building of Newgrange.
because if I'm not wrong, Newgrange predates the Great Pyramids, doesn't
It
it?
does, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, Newgrange is a Neolithic monument
Yes.
in Ireland that has this. It's this almost magical thing in some ways because it's so old. But on the winter solstice, if I'm getting this right, I'm going to get this all wrong now. So I'm like, oh, whatever. Um, the so it's there's a channel in it that lights up on a certain day of the year, and it's clearly some sort of like the understanding of the movement of the planet and the sun to build it is astounding. Do you know what it is? Most people would probably know there's a street in New York that at a certain time of day the light hits it perfectly
Mm.
and it creates this magical effect. That's what Newgrange is.
I equate it to the Well of the Souls from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, I'm actually going to look it up actually because I did a really shit job summarizing what it is.
But obviously, thanks to modern technology, they're able to replicate that on any given day of the year because it's now it's a national heritage site in Ireland, and you can
Yeah,
go visit it. And they
yeah,
allow you to go into the inner chamber, and they simulate the sunlight on the day of the winter
yeah.
solstice.
So Newgrange is a prehistoric monument in County Meath. Um, it's a grand passage tomb that was built during the Neolithic. It's built 3200 BC. So it's older than Stonehenge and the pyramids, which is what I really want to know. And it's aligned with the winter solstice sunrise. So when the sun rises on the winter solstice, the passage lights up. Um, and it's just it. My mind just can't. Is like I want to know like how did they do it? Why did they do it? What was its purpose? I really want to know. So if I could do like a trip in the TARDIS, I get one trip, only one. Like to stay there for a while and talk to people.
Hmm.
That would be my one. Um, yeah. So does that answer your
It
weeping
does.
angel question?
It does. It does. Um, I had an initial another one, but like I realized that I think we answered that last year, which was like if you could take a companion and pair them up with a different doctor, who would you pick? Um, I don't
Yeah, I think
know
we
if
did that
that.
one last year.
Yeah, we did that one last year. Um, I don't know because it's difficult because like, we normally talk about these random things during the course of any given podcast episode. Um, so
Okay,
yeah,
I'm going to ask you a question to close it out because I know what my answer is to this.
okay.
We've been doing this now for a couple of years.
Hmm.
In terms of a listener connection, so that could be a conversation that we had on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. It could have been a review. It could be a conversation you maybe had with someone, you know, in real life listening to the show. What is the one thing where you had, oh, we did good?
It was, and I still remember it vividly. Um, I'm no longer part of this group on Facebook. It was a Doctor Who fan group that the whole idea was that it was positive vibes about the show.
No, we've mentioned it a lot
Yeah,
in previous years.
yes, and I personally I believe it became a case of almost like toxic positivity,
Mm,
where like no dissenting opinion of any like you, if you were to say like that, like, oh, the episode was grand, but I didn't particularly like it. You know,
mm,
you're not allowed to say anything. So I think it became an everyday of toxic positivity. Um, but there was a time, there was a discussion again around the First Doctor and the evidence for how he was bad X, Y, and Z was Twice Upon a Time. And normally when I see this, I, fucking buckle on my shield and I go charging into the breach. Some fucker beat me to it. And he said this, like, no, the Doctor was never like that, and no, it's taken out of context and all this kind of stuff. And he said, look, I've been going back through it, and I've also been listening to this podcast, Time Traveling Team, and they go into all these discussions, and I was like, yeah. So that was
that's
great.
us. We're
Yeah, so
them.
I messaged him, and I was like, I was very thankful for that. And I was like going, and like I think that's one of the reasons why we set this up, because when we initially talked about doing like a YouTube channel, we were both just getting so sick and tired of like this just constant stream of negativity,
Mm,
like because we are living in an age of he who shouts loudest gets listened to
mm,
the most. We're also living in the age of grifting, where
mm,
people will say shit just to kind of tap into that toxic element of any fandom. And but I think where I was coming from is that we're also living in an age of where people are very on the fence about stuff,
mm,
and if they can be like, some people like they fall under like they're convinced or their worst fears are played upon or any of that kind of stuff, and so they're like, well, this person's doing the work for me. They're telling me, they're watching and telling me how bad it is, so I don't have to. And it's like, no. If a positive counter argument comes up, it then forces those people to actually get off the fence and watch it for themselves and make their own opinion. If they still agree, that it's terrible or whatever, that's fine. But at least you made the effort to go and watch it yourself
mm.
and form your own opinion for it. So yeah, no, like I think when we had someone come back and then listen to us and then actually do a rewatch because they liked what they were hearing and then saw that opinion actualized in what
Mm.
they were watching, I thought we did it.
Very cool. Mine was actually something you shared with me a couple of months ago. Um, so there's various like podcast review sites where you can leave reviews on podcasts and stuff. And um, I think you went down a bit of a rabbit hole just out of curiosity, just sort of seeing if there were reviews for us anywhere. And there was one in particular, and it's like, hey, it's a great podcast if you want to like da da da. Da. And the article was like, unlike other Doctor Who podcasts, Trish and Paddy realize that there's an audience listening to them, and they don't talk as if there's no one listening. And it was the weirdest compliment I think I've gotten. I think possibly we've gotten on this, or I've gotten on the podcast. But obviously, this is two friends having a chat. Um, but the fact that like someone was like, it's two friends having a chat, but they realize there's a whole world of people also listening. Um, it's great. People appreciate the fact that it's not just you and I talking shite to each other,
Mm-hmm.
and like we have in jokes, but we try to explain them if
Mm-hmm.
we can. Um, and there was just something about that review that I was like, oh, like it like made me feel all squishy. I was like,
Yeah, I remember that review as well, and it was like,
people appreciate the way we do it.
yeah,
It was very sweet.
because us is just two people having an opinion, and as I said, like we always invite other people's opinions because we just love talking about this show.
Yeah. But yeah, there was something about that that I was just like, that that's really nice to hear. You know. Um, I think there's like like it depends on whether they're hosts, not just two people having a chat.
Yeah.
Which is great. But look, we've gone on. At the time of recording, we're currently at 2 hours and 12 minutes. Um,
Yeah.
everyone in my house has gone to bed. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think we leave it there. This is gonna
Yes.
be our last episode of this year of 2023. We will be back in 2024 to finish off um Peter Davison's first season. I will say is that as much as I said like, oh, social media gives me anxiety or whatever, if you didn't have a chance to submit a question, and you do have a question, do reach out, like I said, Facebook, Instagram, X, Twitter, whatever, email. All the details are in the description of the channel, so um, do feel free to reach out. We will reply. As much as I say
Absolute.
it gives me anxiety, we will. Um, and other than that, happy holidays. You know, if you celebrate a holiday around this time of year, happy
Hmm.
whatever it is you're celebrating. Happy New Year.
Hmm.
And yeah, roll on the Christmas special and
Yes.
then roll on 2024.
Yep. And roll on Percy Jackson. Uh,
And roll Percy Jackson.
so until next year, guys. Bye.
Bye.